Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Today we got a headline, which is White House is tables priorities for actually drone, not so much from regulations, but more from general aviation. So, from aviation
Mhm.
perspective, on how to better support drone technologies to enable more of the advanced flights and hopefully the deliveries we're all waiting for. So we'll circle back on that headline. We're also gonna touch base on IKEA. They're expanding the automated drone fleet for inventory operations, which should be interesting. And then at the end, we're going to have a quick preview of next week's topic, which is everything on drone insurance. So let me start sharing the screen. And I believe, Kirk, you actually shared the story with me on the White House announcement.
Well, it was funny because Bruce was the one who wrote it, and I was actually reading it at the same time he was reading it and thinking about writing about something because, of course, I work. I also run the space site at the network, and so I'm like reading through the whole thing because anything that has to do with NASA, I'm reading through, and all of a sudden I see this, and I was reading through it for completely different reasons, but like drones kept coming up, and like AAM kept coming up, and I'm like, this would probably be a pretty good drone DJ post to write about too, and then Bruce throws it in our Slack channel that he's writing about. I'm like, okay, we're thinking on the same page. So yeah, it's a lot of every I think this is every year or so we get new like kind of priority. I mean, this is budgeting and what they're going to start funding every year, and then this is kind of
It's
this
a
is a different one.
signal,
This is like
right? It's more of
yeah,
a signaling which sectors are
this
the important ones.
this policy thing replaces something from like 2006. I think that was
Mhm.
created. It's like it's a brand new priority. It's like through like 2020. I think it's like it says 2050 a lot on this document, and that's of course climate action plans reduce emissions, and it says that it wants to kind of rebuild the commercial aviation sector by putting in more advanced air mobility
Right.
type
And
vehicles,
when
eVTOLs
I
and stuff
heard
like that.
that, the first thing that popped in my mind, I was thinking they were finally gonna reclassify the airspace.
Yeah, it was like they were talking a lot about like redoing the national airspace needs like more work and needs to be modified to include drones better.
Well, we
Um,
knew that already.
it was kind of like this is kind of like we've been saying it for years, and they now that like this I think the last document that they created like ended in like 2023 or 2022 I think or 2020 2001 not 2001 2021. Um, so this is like kind of the redoing of like all the priorities that need to be done, at least for the priorities that the current administration wants to move forward. Of course, this might say have goals for 2050, but we have new elections coming up in 2 years that could change all of that if someone else gets elected. So this is all with a big grain of political salt that sucks to deal with all the time. But welcome to aviation and government. So
I
but
mean, just to circle back, right? What are they talking about? So the first keyword
mm,
that popped out is obviously they're talking about electric vertical takeoff and landing, right? So
yep,
that includes, quadcopters, includes the typical drones we're flying, also includes the potential delivery air taxi. So anything has to do with electric vertical takeoff and landing.
yep,
The second keyword is AAM, which is the advanced air mobility. And
yep. That
advanced
came
air
up a
mobility,
lot.
I mean, if we talk about reclassifying airspace, this essentially is reclassifying airspace is part of advanced air mobility, right? At the end of the day, my take on this is if you look at cars, before cars went popular, like
Mhm.
super popular, what was the next step? Was civil development. We had to build roads, right? Imagine if you were to work with dirt road, no highway, then we wouldn't have the advancement of actual vehicles. So if you look at drones, it's very similar. Once we have the volume of drones in the air,
Mhm.
obviously remote ID is one of them, is to deconflict the drones, with aviation or from aviation. Now the other perspective is how do you make sure drones don't crash into drones? How do you make
Yep.
sure when drones are delivering things and drone taxi is transporting people, how do they actually separate their ways, not crashing into each other, right?
Yeah, and a big goal that the Biden-Harris administration wants to push forward with the aviation community is zero net emissions by 2050, and a lot of what they talk about to make that happen is with air taxis and for short deliveries, just instead of using your normal conventional 757s, 737s, whatever whatever they use for whatever Amazon's flying around for, for and UPS are flying around, but using those smaller hopping destination, air taxis or air
There's
cargo
a lot
routes.
of infrastructure work to be done to
Yeah,
support that. So
and
one is we need actual not so much highway in the sky, because that's what
mhm,
your general commercial passenger airplanes would do, right? They have their designated flight path. It's not like they just
mhm,
fly wherever they want to. We need to have similar designated flight path for drones. I mean, I know for myself, for example, I wouldn't want a drone just to cut a straight line, right, from point A to point B and cut through residential neighborhood and just fly above homes' backyards,
yep.
right? Just because that's federal airspace, but I don't think that's a sustainable way to do it. They need to have designated pathways, and it would be safer and less privacy concerns, less noise concerns if they follow the roadways just like cars do.
Yep. Especially between those, very high destination hubs like Chicago and is it Nashville? I think that FedEx has a big facility down there. I think it's like FedEx, and I think it's like Nashville. The Chicago is just huge, the amount of cargo that goes through there, and especially to probably then also to New York and then out to California and all. Like you can definitely set up routes at a lower airspeed below your instrument rated flying to your commercial aircraft, below
And
that,
there's got to be
and
some
then
thinking
above the
in there, right?
recreational.
It can't just be
Yeah.
the shortest route possible. There's got to be some thinking considering the density of residential neighborhood. And I don't think anyone should just fly drone
Hmm.
services through, let's say, a school's, playground where kids are playing. So
Yeah.
I think there's some, traffic planning
I
involved,
c-
to say the
I
least.
think the drone side of like the air deliveries is definitely going to be a harder one to probably get airspace set up for, because I think this is a big learning curve at the moment to figure that stuff out. Like, how are we going to handle flying over schools and flying over hospitals and flying over, even just government facilities that you probably don't want aircraft flying over, whether it's federal, state, or local. Um,
And
but
here's
the
another take on that.
Yeah.
I had a chat with actually a large construction company this week, and they raised the question to say, okay, legally speaking, drones can fly over their site because they don't have jurisdiction of
Yeah.
their airspace. So if they're operating cranes, they have machinery, they have people down there, and they're flying their own drones. How can they legally stop others from flying in there?
Yeah, it would have to be like similar to just a controlled airspace, but in a corridor type area. Like, this is going to be one of those trial. I mean, maybe probably trial and error type ways of regulating, where they try something and they see if it works, and if it doesn't, they have to change it, because it's just one of those just brand new areas that you have to figure out. And hopefully, we've there,
Hopefully, part of this proposal is looking into that.
and hopefully they don't. There's also the concern of overregulation to where it makes it too difficult for innovation. That's kind of always it's in every industry. This is not just it's in tech. I know there's a huge debate going on right now with the tech industry in Silicon Valley with regulation and stifling innovation. How much there's a pushback between
Yeah.
VCs and the government and whatever, and making sure that we're not making it too difficult to get into deliveries, which I feel like I'm a broken record for all the other areas, but like it's a fair statement to say that you can't make the FAA have a huge long list of
But then
similar to
you
air
can't.
taxis right
The
now
other
or
thing is
commercial airlines.
you've got to make an effort to avoid any conflicts, right? So
Exactly.
say if this is a live construction, say if it's a site where construction companies have activities over, then who
And
has priorities? Is it a construction company that's flying drones over their site
yeah,
or operating cranes? What happens if somebody else fly the drones over?
and there's an interesting everyone there's also might be an interesting second, another way of doing this around, which is not probably, I don't know if this would be the best way of doing it, especially with aviation. If we're coming from the aviation world, but I feel like alcohol. We're talking about alcohol. We're talking about liquor,
Right.
especially whiskeys. They're self-policing. They don't have which we're talking about specifically whiskey, which is something I've been into on the side a lot. But they actually have, they can't advertise to communities that are less than like 67% over the age of 21 or something like that, and they can't make advertisement that are too close to being childlike. So there was an issue. I think it was like Kylie Jenner was sipping tequila out of like a bottle with a straw for an ad, and like the companies like shut that down. Like it was like it wasn't the government that got upset. It was actually the companies that was just I think it was one of the unions or something like that. It's
Are
like
we gonna
you
rely
have
on
to.
are we gonna rely on the ethics of private
Yeah.
private
So
for
is
profit
it
companies?
like the government goes, okay, you can't, you have to make sure that you're safe. You got to make sure you don't get in each other's way, and that you're not causing damage to their communities that you're serving, and you have to regulate it yourself. You have to make sure that yourself has it. I don't know how it would be a really difficult way to set up, probably. Like I don't know if that can work in any other way outside of the liquor world, because that is like such a niche community that it works. So I don't know if that's even a possibility in something as large as aviation, but it's an interesting concept that's out there, that I don't that
Well,
is just probably very hard to
with drones, we're
duplicate.
also bringing aviation closer to day-to-day world, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
not like a plane, flying 20, 30,000 feet in the sky. It's also not like there are only so many passenger airplanes that actually fly on a daily basis. We have a lot more drones, and they're much closer to the ground. So
But
it's
then
nice to see.
they're not as but also I don't think drones are as uh they're easier to control than like and as not like individually control a drone, but like the controlling a large continuation of drones is much easier to control
Right.
that than like controlling a community of general aviation
Right.
enthusiasts.
But
Yeah.
the other difference is general aviation, people who
Mhm.
are operating.
They
How many years of university degree or training and experience they have
here's
to go through? And how
yeah.
much experience do you need to fly a drone?
And I've left the company that I work for long enough that I think I can talk about this now. But here's the issue with the general aviation world. Even if we come up with new airspaces that are drone friendly, I had to do a support call, and I was working at this company that created we create every month we sent a new data out to our apps that would redo the airspace for these pilots. And I got a call from an elderly man, just upset that why he can't find these things, and like why is my thing different than this person? I can't forget. He hasn't updated. He never updated his air or the data for the
Aeronautical
new
chart. Yeah.
the aeronautical charts in almost, I don't know, 15 years. Like it was like
Wait.
that is
I
not
thought
a
okay, at least in Canada, the charts are republished every 6 months. So if you want to fly, you have to have the recent copy of the
yeah.
aeronautical chart.
Well, I'm pretty sure. I mean, if you want to fly down here in the United States, you have to understand the most current airspaces. Like it's not like he's not like it's
It's
just
not rocket science.
no one's policing it. So it's very it's that's not and that's not a one-off scenario. Like that is a very common thing for pilots to not have the most up-to-date air charts. So that's like going to be a really big issue if we start doing
If we
new
start
airspaces.
reclassifying the airspace, right?
Yeah,
But also
especially
at the
when they
same,
don't want to contribute with the next gen airspace, which comes up with this document too, the next
yeah,
gen
but
airspace, which
at
is
the
the
same
ADS-B.
time, you also have to look at, let's say, take current control B, like a class B airspace, for
Mm-hmm.
example, in states. Just look at any of the major international airports. What's the radius from surface level, right, to like 2,500 feet
It could
of that
be
controlled
massive.
airspace? Massive. It's like 5, 6 nautical miles probably.
It
So,
covers the
so if
airspace here
you
in
go
Milwaukee covers half the county.
So if you go, let's say 500 meters away, or let's say if you go 1 mile away from the
Mm-hmm.
center of the airport, do you see planes flying 200 feet off the ground? Do you see them taking off? Then if they
Yeah,
don't, why are they occupying that airspace? Why is it still controlled airspace for, general aviation planes?
yeah, and I think they're on the track to fix that, because especially down here, like you get automatic approval at a lot of places inside class, controlled airspace up to 400 feet, as long as you're not right next to the airport. But just like kind of just getting away with that, like I already get automatic clearance at 400 feet. Why can't you just move the airspace up
Airspace up.
400 feet? Like
Yeah.
it's in a ring
Or
around
how
the
about
airspace. Just move
how
it up
about
400 feet.
if you do that, not allowing, let's say, general aviation to fly below certain altitude
I feel like general aviation just yet feel like for safety reasons, general aviation should not be flying below 400 feet. Period.
to begin with. I mean,
I
the
feel like
reason for
the rant
400
we go on every single time we bring up airspace. This is general aviation ruins everything.
feet.
And I have a lot of friends in that space, so please don't hate me because you guys are cool and I want to learn how to fly a Cessna too. But stop being annoyed.
And those ones are not flying in controlled airspace. Those ones are
Yeah.
flying in uncontrolled airspace, right?
Which I mean, it's like if we have to have rules on uncontrolled airspace, you should have rules on uncontrolled airspace. But okay, we're on a whole deep rant on general aviation again.
So
But
going
it,
back to okay, headline for this week was we're really talking about White House setting. I mean, at the end
yeah,
of the day, this is a signal, right? This is a
yeah,
signal that airspace for remote or advanced air mobility for the drone industry, which is focused on electric VTOL. So your typical quadcopters, most of your DJI, Skydio, Autel all fall into this category. So White House had sent a signal that the industry has grown enough. We
yeah. That
really need to look at how to
it has to.
properly design the airspace and support the next stage of industry growth.
It's no longer a niche sector of an
No, it
enthusiast
cannot be
area
ignored anymore.
that happens every so often. It's made it the White House now already is saying that things need to change and we need to be more open and more. We need to work on making the system more modern to include these areas, which is super super exciting. If the political system is consistent for the next 50 years
So I guess we shall see
or
what happens.
27 years.
Let's see what actions actually follow, their announcement.
Yeah,
That's what it comes down to.
exactly.
Moving on, IKEA had an interesting story: automated drone fleet for inventory operations. And I like the little drone picture they had there.
I like how it's just so IKEA. Like they could have gotten like a generic drone to do it, but like they made it blue and yellow, which is just and it says IKEA on the side, which is always great.
I like the propeller guards.
Yeah, obviously if you find a drone is that you need some propeller guards, which is it's super cool. I'm sad that it's only working over in Europe at the moment because I would love to go down to IKEA. That here in the Midwest, there's one down the road from me, and there's one like the next one's like in Chicago. But to see these guys fly around, maybe we'll send Bruce out because Bruce lives in Paris, so maybe he can get out
Maybe he can go check it out.
there. Bruce, go drive over to Germany. It's not that far, right?
Um, it is interesting to use it for inventory because there's also
Mhm.
a security drone being used in warehouse after
Yeah,
hours, right? So after hours, it can actually fly around and potentially check different things. So I also wonder if they're gonna use this more. Inventory doesn't have to be real time when the store is open, right? Is it gonna be more when less
yeah.
people are in the store?
It makes sense. I think this is like probably only when it's closed, so they can fly over
Hmm.
people. I'm
Yeah,
assuming. Yeah, that makes
yeah.
sense. Yeah, it would be weird to see that's going on like in during normal business hours. It's it would
But
be
I mean,
really
it does
annoying.
help. Imagine if you have to go to a scissor lift and go up to count
Hmm.
inventory, right? So I can definitely
Yeah.
see this helping. But my other question is, all right, how high are their shelves? So
Oh,
what would it
they're
take?
so high.
What would it take to have a telescopic, let's say a telescopic thing with just a camera on the top to go just up and down?
Have you seen those Walmart like robots that go up and down the aisle for inventory?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
they're like just big old pillars. You just have one of those that's like 2 stories tall and have it
Yeah,
just
I
go
mean,
down
I would
every.
like to see the business case to see which one is cheaper.
I'm sure drones are cheaper. I'm sure that's like
I
a
don't
really large
know.
thing. I
I'm
feel like
not
the
so
state.
sure. Well, you still have to train someone. Yeah, I mean, even if this is automated, you still have to train someone to manage it, right?
Yeah, especially if this looks like it's a pretty cheap looking drone. Like it's not like a large drone like that. Like it's, I mean, enterprise stuff, of course, is always like stupidly expensive. But who knows? Like part of this might not be like a, especially when you probably don't need a lot of them. You need like maybe like what 2 or 3 of them probably that go up and down.
Depending on flight time too.
Depends on the software, depends on the flight time, depends on like how long it takes to
And I
acquire like the
also want to know
barcode.
how much downwash it actually generates. So
Oh, probably not a lot if it's that
if you
small.
got dust on the shelves, is it dubbing as a cleaning? Like a dust buster?
I
It
mean,
will blow
if
all the
you
dust off.
make those propeller guards a little bit more solid, and you got a sending loop there pretty much, and you can go real fast.
Again, can they dub it as dust buster?
Yeah, you just hover it across the floor, and you don't have to
Yeah,
sweep anymore.
yeah, there
You'll
you
just push off to the side. There's so many ways, IKEA, you can capitalize this, and you should hire us as your consultants for how to use
Well,
drones
first of
and
all, obviously it's working for marketing.
at least for marketing, but also for consulting for how you can use drones. That's probably not helpful, but it looks cool.
A preview on next week's story. How much on drone insurance? I mean, that's the article we had from Ishvina this week.
Mm-hmm.
But next week, we're going to dive deeper into what is drone insurance? What does it cover? How much does it cost? Do you actually need drone insurance? And, should you get drone insurance? Those are the
Should you get?
questions we're going to
Yeah,
cover
I think the
next.
biggest question is: should you get drone insurance from a third party, or should you just buy the DJI Care?
Well,
That's still a
there's
good one as
different
well, because what's
insurance.
the difference?
There's drone coverage on the physical insurance, just
Mm-hmm.
like your car insurance. You have liability that covers other people, and then
Yep.
you have personal property right coverage, either the drone itself or any accessories and things that you have with it, or what happens if your drone is stolen rather than crashed. Who can cover your
Yep.
insurance at that time? So
And
anyway, next week focus on drone insurance.
I think we'll get a quote for how much it's going to cost to cover all the review units that Drone DJ has acquired over the
Yeah.
years.
Well, that's the real question. How much?
I'll look into that and see if I get a quote for all my
Yeah, you
drones.
can actually it is pretty real time if you get the Skywatch app. We
Mhm.
use Skywatch insurance, but we're on the annual liability plus the physical drone coverage policy. But I also have students who just get their app and pay by the hour or pay by the day when they come in
Yep.
just to do their practice flight.
Yep. So we'll see how much it costs to cover the Drone DJ fleet.
We'll find out. So that's all we got for you this week, and we'll see you back here next week.